The plan was flawless. At least, that's what they thought. A multi-million-dollar contract, a CEO without protection, an inside man. Everything was set. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the blackout hit. 4 armed men breached the penthouse, moving with surgical precision. The woman inside, Madison Reed, the youngest CEO of Reed Technologies, was asleep, alone, defenseless, or so they believed. Seconds later, their lead man collapsed, throat cut, no sound. The others didn't realize until it was too late. In the shadows behind them, a figure moved like a ghost, silent, precise, ruthless. One attacker raised his gun only to drop it, his hand broken. Another turned, too slow. A blade found his spine. The last man ran. He almost made it. Almost. A single shot echoed in the hallway. And then silence. Madison awoke to the smell of blood, disoriented, afraid, until a voice, deep, calm, familiar, cut through the panic. "You're safe." Her heart stopped. That voice, she turned and saw him. Ethan Cross, her former bodyguard. The man she had fired 6 months ago. The man she hadn't seen since the night she ended everything. Now standing in her penthouse, alive, breathing heavily, covered in blood, holding a gun. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, too stunned to move. Ethan said nothing. He just looked at her. And in his eyes, Madison saw something that terrified her more than the killers on her floor. Regret. But before she could speak again, he collapsed, right there, at her feet. And Madison Reed, who had never cried for anyone but herself, knelt beside the only man who had never betrayed her, the man she had once abandoned, the man who just saved her life. Ethan woke up in silence. The hospital lights were dim, the machines whispering steady heartbeats. For a moment, he didn't move. He listened, and then he felt her, sitting there, watching. Madison Reed. Her power suit replaced by a gray hoodie, no makeup, eyes hollow. She looked nothing like the woman who had ruled boardrooms. Ethan tried to speak. She shook her head. No. Her voice cracked. "Don't say anything." And for the first time in 6 months, Ethan obeyed her. Not as a bodyguard, not as a soldier, but as a man who didn't have the strength to argue. It took 2 days before they spoke again. In that time, Madison never left his side. When Ethan finally asked why, she answered without looking at him. "Because everyone else is dead." His throat tightened. "What happened after I left?" She hesitated, then whispered, "They got inside." Ethan closed his eyes. He understood now. Firing him hadn't just been a mistake, it had been the reason they came. The truth unraveled like a noose. Madison had made enemies long before Ethan. Corporate espionage, insider threats, assassination contracts. But what she hadn't known, her father's legacy, a hidden war between private security networks, corporate militias, and rogue contractors. And Reed Technologies sat at the center. "You were never the target," Ethan said flatly. Madison stared. "What? They were after your father's files." "What files?" Ethan's jaw clenched. "The ones he died for." Silence. And then, Madison Reed, CEO, survivor heiress, did something no one had seen her do in 10 years. She cried, because her father had never told her. And now he was dead. Later that night, as Ethan slept, Madison stood over him, watching. She remembered the day she fired him, the cold words, the look in his eyes. He hadn't argued, he just walked away. She whispered now, voice shaking, "I'm sorry." Ethan stirred, but he didn't wake, and Madison knew sorry wouldn't be enough. Not anymore. They didn't wait. Less than 48 hours after Ethan left the hospital, the second attack came. This time, Madison's mansion. She wasn't surprised, she was ready. But readiness wasn't enough. The walls cracked, the defenses failed. And when the masked men entered, Madison understood what true fear felt like. Because this time, Ethan wasn't there. She had told him to leave, to save himself. She thought it was the right choice. She was wrong. Gunfire tore through the marble hallways. Madison ran, not for her life, for time, because she knew what she'd hidden, her father's files. She had found them, in the place no one looked, inside her mother's grave, encrypted drives, unbreakable security. But not untraceable, and now they were coming for them. She reached the panic room, sealed the door. Hands shaking, she activated the upload. One last backup, and then footsteps, outside. The door wasn't going to hold. Her breath faltered, she closed her eyes, waited. And then silence, no gunfire, no boots, nothing. A different kind of terror. Someone was inside the panic room. She opened her eyes and saw him, Ethan, covered in blood, holding his knife. "Get up," he said coldly. Madison obeyed, because when Ethan Cross gave an order, people listened. Even the woman who had once fired him. They didn't speak. Not as Ethan dragged her through hidden tunnels, not as bodies burned behind them. Only when the city lights returned did Madison find her voice. "You came back." Ethan didn't look at her. "I never left." She tried to understand. "Why?" His answer was simple. "Because your father asked me to." Madison froze. "What?" Ethan met her eyes, and in them, she saw the truth. "I made him a promise." And suddenly, everything made sense. Why Ethan had stayed, why he had watched, why he had bled. Not for her, but for the man she could never live up to, her father. And now, Madison Reed had only one question left. What was the promise? Ethan's voice was stone. "To keep you alive, no matter what." They ran, through empty streets, burned safe houses, abandoned offices. Madison Reed was no longer a CEO. She was a fugitive. And Ethan Cross was no longer her bodyguard. He was her executioner in waiting. Because if she failed to escape, he'd promised her father to ensure one thing: she wouldn't be taken alive. The files changed everything. Her father's legacy wasn't money. It wasn't power. It was a war. A silent digital war. Hidden networks, blackmail archives, names that controlled governments, and now Madison held it all. "Why didn't he tell me?" she whispered. Ethan's voice was colder than the night. "Because you would have tried to stop him. And now? Now it's your war." She broke, dropped to her knees. "I can't." Ethan stood over her. "You will." Their pursuers didn't stop. Day after day, attack after attack, each more desperate than the last, but Ethan was relentless. He fought, he killed, he survived, because he knew only one outcome mattered: keep her breathing, at any cost. But Madison changed. Each kill hardened her, each betrayal silenced her, and soon she wasn't running. She was hunting. She found the servers, she found the people, and she did what her father never could. She pulled the trigger. Ethan watched, and in her he saw the man who had once given him his last order. Her father. The war ended not with a battle, but with a broadcast. One night, across global networks, every secret her father had collected was released. Names, dates, crimes, proof. The world burned, but Madison survived because Ethan Cross stood beside her as promised. Silence. Months had passed since Madison's world shattered, and now all that remained was silence. A silence louder than any gunfire, more oppressive than any battle. The world outside moved on, cities rebuilt, new leaders rose from ashes she had created, but here, in this forgotten place, time stopped. She sat in the same chair every day. Looking out through the frosted window of the small mountain cabin, the snow fell endlessly, blanketing the world outside. A world she no longer belonged to. Ethan watched her. He kept his distance, not because she wanted it, but because she needed it. He knew grief. He understood regret. But this was something deeper. Madison hadn't just lost a war, she had lost herself. Every night she woke up screaming, silent screams, no sound escaping her lips. But Ethan heard them. From the other room, he always heard them, and every night he stood outside her door, listening, waiting, guarding, because that's what he did. And every morning, when sunlight crept through the cracks of the cabin, Madison sat by that window, motionless, unchanged. He wondered how much longer she could last, and how much longer he could keep watching her die without lifting a hand to stop it. Weeks blurred into months. Madison barely ate, barely spoke, barely breathed. Ethan tried everything. He brought food she used to love. He played her father's old records. He even sat beside her once, breaking his silent vigil. But her eyes never left the window, until one night. She whispered, "I failed him." Ethan looked up sharply. He hadn't heard her voice in weeks. "My father, he wanted to save the world, and I destroyed it." Her voice cracked. "He believed in me, you believed in me, and I killed everything." Ethan wanted to tell her she was wrong, that her father had condemned her to this war, not protected her from it. But he knew words wouldn't reach her, so he stayed silent. "I see their faces," she whispered. "Every night." "Whose?" Ethan asked softly. "Everyone I killed. Everyone I couldn't save." Silence. Then Ethan spoke the truth neither of them wanted to admit. They'd be dead either way. Madison looked at him for the first time in weeks. Her eyes were empty. Then what was the point? Ethan couldn't answer, because there was no point. Only survival. Days later, Ethan found her outside, barefoot, standing knee-deep in snow. She stared at the frozen lake as if she could see through it, as if answers waited beneath the ice. He approached carefully. "Madison?" No response. "Come inside." She whispered, "Why did you save me?" Ethan hesitated, not because he didn't know the answer, but because he wasn't sure if she deserved to hear it. Finally, he said, "Because your father asked me to." "Bear." Madison shook her head. "I'm not him." "No." Ethan stepped closer. "You're stronger." She turned then, tears frozen on her cheeks. "I don't feel strong." "You are." Her voice cracked. "I'm scared." Ethan nodded once. "So am I." A pause. "Then what do we do?" she asked, trembling. "We keep breathing." He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. And in that moment, Ethan Cross knew his mission wasn't over. Keeping her alive wasn't enough anymore. Now, he had to teach her how to live. That night, Madison fell asleep in the cabin, her breathing steady for the first time in months. Ethan sat beside her, watching, guarding, because that's what he did. And for the first time, he believed she might wake up tomorrow wanting to live. Years passed. The world forgot. The files Madison had released reshaped everything. Governments restructured, corporations fell, wars ended before they began. Her name vanished from headlines. Historians debated if she had ever existed. But Ethan remembered. In a cabin beyond the world's reach, he watched her rebuild. Not a company, not an empire, herself. Each morning, Madison walked the frozen lake's edge, not to escape, but to breathe. Each night, Ethan sat by the fire, waiting for her to speak. Sometimes she did. Most times, she didn't, and that was enough. One morning, she spoke without prompting. "Do you miss it?" Ethan didn't ask what. He answered honestly, "No." Madison nodded. She believed him. Later, as snowflakes fell silently, she asked a harder question. "Do you hate me?" Ethan hesitated. He stood, crossed the room, and without speaking, sat beside her. After a long silence, he whispered, "I don't know how to hate you." She cried then. But it wasn't sorrow. It was release. As months turned into years, they aged together. Not as warriors, not as fugitives, but as two broken people learning how to heal. One morning, Madison stood at the lake's edge longer than usual. Ethan joined her. Without turning, she asked, "Why are you still here?" Ethan answered simply, "Because you're still breathing." She smiled softly. "Is that enough?" A pause. Ethan whispered, "It is for me." On her final day, Madison didn't wake. She passed silently in her sleep beside the man who never left her side. Ethan buried her beneath the pines by the frozen lake where she had learned how to live again. He carved one thing into the stone, Madison Reed. She chose to breathe. And then he sat and watched, because that's what he did. Even when no one remained, even when no promise bound him anymore. He watched, until the snow covered everything, until nothing remained but silence. And in that silence, Ethan Cross finally rested.